Welcome to Guided, helping you navigate your divine journey. I'm your host, Jody Reynosa, and with me today is author, comedian, and spiritual leader, Maggy Whitehouse. And she is here with us today, a second time on Guided. I'm so excited. She's from the UK, and we are so excited to be together. There have been a little difficulties in making this work just because some tech things and, you know, the solar eclipse, and we have the great conjunction ahead of us soon. So we've had such a time, right, Maggy? But we're excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm seeing memes and everything all over at the moment saying people just can't wait for 2020 to end, but it's just been a huge adventure. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, talk about
and things like this too.
I know. And one of the things that I'm so grateful for, your book, not only is it funny, but the Tales of the Blue Panda, oh my goodness, you drop some truth bombs in there that are profound and definitely have moved me. So folks, if you have not heard about Maggy's new book, it is really dynamite. It is amazing. It literally is out of this world. Blue Panda, there it is.
It is, yes, it is.
So, okay, Tales of the Blue Panda, let's get right into it. How did you even come up with this concept? I mean, it almost sounds like there's some truth or maybe some of like people's own experiences laced into this. So how did you come up with this?
It's a long story, but hey, we got the time, thank goodness. Basically,
Yes.
I used to be a TV producer and presenter. And a few years ago, as I'm a comedian and I'm older and I'm an ordained minister, I was asked to go on Britain's Got Talent. I was actually headhunted to do it. And I crashed and burned, though Simon Cowell said yes, which was very nice. And this year, again, I had 5 producers call me to ask me to be on Britain's Got Talent. Unfortunately, I said no this year because they had another minister on there and they did things to him, which I'm so glad they didn't do to me. But the point of it was I was trying to ask God what she wanted me to do next, because it's always such a good idea to ask God. And I am this odd thing, which is I'm an ordained priest. I work for the Methodist Church in the United Kingdom. Well, I haven't much this year, as you can imagine, but I'm an independent. But I'm also very experienced in broadcasting. I've been a producer and a presenter, radio and TV, and I know God doesn't waste anything. So I was saying, well, what do you want me to do? Because I don't think that Britain's Got Talent is the thing for me. And the very next thing was I saw on social media within about half an hour an advertisement for something called Access All Areas, which was Fremantle, who's the company that makes Britain's Got Talent in the UK. They were having an open day for people who wanted a career in television. So they were expecting 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. And something said, go to it. And of course, my ego immediately went, what? What are you talking about? I've produced network documentaries. I've presented live TV. What are you on about? And it just said, go to it. So I booked a place and I showed up, and I took a fellow comedian with me who was approximately my age for moral support, because and everybody there was all young enough to be my grandchildren, and the producers there were going, what is she doing here? What is this other older woman doing? What are they doing here? And about lunchtime they came over and asked us, and the other lady, who was also called Maggy, talked to them, and I talked to them too. And I said, I'm kind of here to find out what I need to do next. I didn't talk about God or anything, but I said, I've got all this experience in the media, but I'm actually too weird. I can't get on Pause for Thought on the BBC or anything like that. People think I'm too weird and I don't know what to do, because I actually think I've got a lot to offer. And they both looked at me and said, embrace your weird. Yes. They said, you need to get weirder because you're trying to be too conventional. They said, do a podcast. And you've obviously written more books than we can shake a stick at. How weird are they? And I said, they're very, very weird. They're all about Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. And they said, no, get weirder. Do you do novels? And I said, yes, I do novels. And they said, write a weird novel. So I just went home and went, well, what am I going to do? So I called a lady I knew quite well in Dartmoor, which is where I live in Devon, which is beautiful moorland, very rough and ready. And she's a witch. I would call her a shaman, but she actually is a witch. You know, she does herbal healing and deep shamanic journeying and things like that. And I said, it's been suggested I do a podcast. So the name of the podcast came to me on my way home. It's called Wise Women, the Vicar and the Witch. Do you want to do it with me? And she said, yes, because I would love to have a voice.
Oh,
So
I
we thought
love
we'd
it.
plan this podcast, and her name is Susie, which is a terrible name for a witch. It's a terrible name. She ought to be called Angarad or Gwyneth or something like that. And she said her second name was Alicina.
Yes.
And I love that name, Alicina.
Yes.
And I just sat down pretty much the following morning, having set up the podcast, and we were going to record it. But then we went into lockdown. So we're going to have to do it on Zoom. So I had more time instead of traveling. And I just sat down and said, okay, I'm going to start the book.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, Alicina is one of the characters in the book.
Absolutely. So what I did was I wrote Susie the Witch and my story, and then ramped it up to the nth degree and made it fictional and crazy and magical. And I wrote on the back of people like Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett and people like that, and just wanted to make it as funny as I could. But I also wanted to make it wise if I possibly could. And what really struck me, and has struck me for quite a few years, because I'm in a church that works a lot with the dead and the dying. And we're trained exorcists. I've only ever done one exorcism in my life. But we are trained to make sure that souls go through when they die. And there's an awful lot of modern day celebrants in funerals who don't have that training and don't know how to spot if the soul hasn't left, because some souls don't want to go. Or some souls miss the boat. If you've ever watched the movie Ghost, I'm sure you have.
Yes.
The main character doesn't go through. He misses the light.
Right.
And it's so easy to do. And what came to me was, we now have this worldwide pandemic. Of course, some people don't believe in it, but I kind of do, because I think we've got lots to learn from it. And I thought, well, what's going to happen to all these souls that are going to get shoved in the cremator without proper services, which has happened to a certain extent in the United Kingdom? And if there's going to be a huge death count, isn't this going to up the ante of people who may not have gone through? And that was just what came in with the book, and it just wrote itself. I don't think I wrote it. I mean, I'm a talented writer, but I'm quite happy to sit there and take dictation, if you see what I mean.
Well, and I love the way that you merge ancient wisdom with the modern things that are going on right now, like the pandemic. And you lace that all together, and it's so beautiful. It's like just this compilation of comedy and wisdom. And so it really had touched me in so many ways, because you're laughing and then you're also like, this aha moment. So many aha moments for me. And especially when it comes to healing, like the spiritual healing. And for me, it was like, you know what? I really want to get this together before I have to go through the veil. You know, and so, yeah. And so it was, and I told Maggie, you know, I have 10 pages before the end of the book, and I'm just like on the edge of my seat, like, ooh, what happens? So it is one of those books where you are just like, it's just like the cliffhanger, you know, you just want to know what's going to happen. And I just highly recommend it. It is such a fun book. So Maggie, talk to me a little bit more about this character, the main character. So Amabel, she basically has like, is it a series of near deaths, or is it kind of like she has a near death and then she's almost like a quantum leaper? Like it seems like she goes to different timelines. And so she's seeing various aspects of not only her life, but other people's lives. And so it's really a beautiful, fun roller coaster of a journey. And you see different things like life after death, her with, you know, deity and different angels and different characters, and then people here on earth, and then souls that are earthbound and don't want to go through because, and then what I thought was interesting, hospitals on the other side, you know, because there's still reparation that needs to go on with the healing of souls because of what happened here on earth. So there's just so much that's so lovely.
Thank you very much. Yes, I ramped up my experiences and just made them far more exciting. I haven't had a near-death experience, but I do know people who have. I have been attacked by a 7-foot barracuda, not a great white shark, so I upped it for Bella that it was a great white shark. But also, one of the things in the book is the fact my name is Maggy, Maggy, which is a very unusual spelling of Maggie, and it isn't short for Margaret. And I sometimes find myself getting very unholistically, unspiritually annoyed when people don't spell my name correctly. So I thought, well, let's ramp that up too. Let's give the heroine a really utterly impossible name. And her name is Phaedra Amabel Velvet. And that's Amabel with an M and not N. And Phaedra, Phaedra. And I got that from an old Nancy Sinatra Lee Hazelwood song that I loved when I was a child called Some Velvet Morning. And I thought, okay, what if the whole of the book pivoted on correct spelling of her name? And I just thought that was really silly, so I did it.
That is so funny. Wow.
Sorry about that. That's our new beagle getting excited.
Oh, I love it. I love it. He wants to join in the conversation too. So, okay, when you talk about, you know, her near-death experience and then her, I guess I'll say, I don't want to give too much away, everybody, but but there's some things that I think are just really touching. One of the angels in the book talks about the healing that goes on with souls. And I think that's really profound. There's this one part that really touched me. And this one angel talks about when Amabel asks for some healing, and the angel says, well, you can only be healed up to the point that you are willing to be healed, and you have the capacity to be healed. And it's kind of like a ha-ha for her. It was a definite aha for me, because I think so many of us have blind spots. We want and desire and hope to have that healing, but it's like something keeps blocking us, and oftentimes it's the resistance and certain things that we're not seeing, or maybe our subconscious doesn't want to see, or we're not ready to see at that point. So this angel is talking to her, and so she finally just says, okay, well, can you heal me up into the point that I'm able and ready to be healed? And I thought that was so beautiful and profound. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yes, the angel's called Ariel. And well, that's the name that Bella gives her. Amabel is shortened to Bella. And she is the angel of Amabel's church, because Amabel, to her great shock and surprise, is a vicar, because the near-death experience she has means she's lost her memory.
Yes.
And she's actually lost it entirely. She's got no idea who she is. She can remember a little bit about her childhood. And as far as she's concerned, she's a Hindu.
Yeah.
A Hindu agnostic, but she wakes up and finds she's the rector, which means she's in charge of several parishes in Devon, which is the county I live in. And so she's completely nonplussed about how she got to be a vicar at all. So she's not even remembering what her problems are.
Yeah.
So she's just saying to the angel, can you restore my memory? Can you do this? And the angel's saying, no,
yeah,
I can't. You're not ready.
Yeah.
And I think the moral of that is that we can only have the healing up to the point that we have still carrying resistance. But once you've had that healing, you can then take the next step. Because the whole story is she has a little bit of healing from the angel. She doesn't feel any different, but actually she's much clearer. And you can actually see that in the writing, that she's responding better, and she's picking up and she's remembering that she's got a friend called Alicina who can help her.
Yeah.
And one of the lovely things for me is, one of the things about doing communion, you know, Mass as a minister, is that it usually, certainly in the Church of England, which is like the Episcopalian, you gabble it a lot, you know, everybody wants to get through it. They want to get to that bit, and some of the prayers people don't understand and it's boring. And I, during lockdown, learned how to do a slow Mass, which Alicina, Susie said to her, sounded like the idea of hell. It's when you actually exactly, because Masses are usually far too long. So I sit on the floor in my robes and sit cross-legged with the words, and I do what's known as Lectio Divina, which means I take a sentence and just sit with it.
Yeah. Ooh,
and it can take 2 hours to do it, but it's so much more meaningful. And what I wanted to put in was the fact that because Bella's lost her memory, the first communion that she does, and she does it just on her own, is how it's meant to be, because she's got none of the blocks, none of the boredom, none of the upbringing that said that Christianity was stupid or daft, or that people think you're an idiot or anything like that. And she's just sitting there or standing there, and everything flows, and the angels come down at the moment of invoking them to bring spirit into the host. And she just has this extraordinary experience and thinks, why don't all vicars have that? And that is the big question. Why don't all vicars have that? And we don't.
Yeah.
You have an awful lot of the magic knocked out of us at theology college or seminary, because it all becomes very academic, and we've lost so much of the mystery.
Yeah.
And it's, the early church fathers were absolutely clear. I cannot remember whether it's Gregory of Nyssa or Irenaeus, and I'm sorry, but one of them said, there isn't time or space to tell you of all the mysteries that are in the Bible that aren't written down.
Yes.
And it's all the spaces between the words, and
Yes.
all this priestcraft that we're taught to pass on, which is irrelevant, because when Jesus died, the veil of the temple was torn. It says that in Matthew and Mark's gospel. And the whole point of that means you don't need a separation between you and the divine. You don't need a priest.
Yeah.
This is the point at which we're being told you have that correct connection.
Yeah.
And we don't get it.
Right. There's a couple points I want to bring up that as you were talking, I was remembering. So number one, when you were talking about this slow mass, so things really set in, the thing that came to my mind was yin yoga. Now in yin yoga, you hold the poses for 3 to 5 minutes. And as you're holding those poses, because normally, you kind of like flow through it in vinyasa. You do the different, routine's the wrong word. You kind of do a flow of movements, and it's faster. Yin, you're doing those same movements, but 3 to 5 minutes. And the way that you breathe into those movements, there's something about that where it almost sparks, at least for me, and I've heard it from other people who experience this, it sparks this level of inspiration where it's a mind, body, spirit. It just opens up this almost like portal. And there's just this flow of information that comes, and it really sits into your body and soul. And not only healing goes on, but so much information comes to you, and inspiration of like, whether it's next steps, what to do for your day, clearing certain things of the past, clearing certain energies in your body. So there's a lot of things that can happen when you really energetically metabolize and digest things in that way, instead of just, going by rote and like saying certain ritualistic things, whether it be, from church or, saying the Pledge of Allegiance or, whatever it is, when you slow down and really spiritually and energetically metabolize things, it does make a difference.
It makes a huge difference, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am kind of taught by that. I had this extraordinary bishop who was my mentor when I was being ordained, who's taught me so much of this kind of thing. And one of the things we do quite often, because we're independents in the liberal Catholic Church, the Apostolic Liberal Catholic Church, so we do requiem masses.
Oh, yeah.
And those, and this sounds terrible, those are my favorite. So this is probably why the whole book's around that kind of thing, because they are so beautiful. And quite frequently the soul shows up.
Yes.
And you just get this kind of sense. And every now and then, even when I'm talking about this now after all these years, I think you're probably imagining it, you're making it up, but I have to act as if I'm not, just in case I'm not. And I had an example just before I started the book. An old colleague of mine from years and years ago died. He had a heart attack, and sometimes people who have a heart attack are a bit too shocked and don't get through, but I didn't think he had a problem. He had a faith, and he was a lovely man, and I don't think he had any particular blocks. Sometimes if you're an anti-theist, not an atheist, atheists go through really well, much better than a lot of Christians actually, but anti-theists who have a bit of an issue about the whole thing may not. But anyway, something said, God said, do a requiem for Steve. And I thought, well, Steve doesn't need a requiem. And then I'll do the requiem, I don't mind. So I'm doing this requiem and I can sense that Steve is there. And then I sensed somebody else. And I thought, who's that? And as I went on with the mass, it became more and more obvious that it was a mutual friend of Steve's and mine who had died some years ago when I had cancer. And one of the things, when you are seriously ill yourself, you're advised not to do things like requiems or healing, because all the energy needs to be focusing on you, and you aren't balanced anyway to do these things. So I never did a requiem for Les. And Steve went and fetched him because he hadn't gone through.
Oh, wow.
However, you don't have to worry about that. I know, it's just beautiful.
Yes,
and I just thought, oh my God, it's Les. But I said, how long have you been waiting? But the wonderful thing is, and that's why I wanted to make time so fluid in the book, is in the world of Berea, which is what the Kabbalists call spirit, time isn't the same as here. It's kairos there. Here it is chronos, which is linear time. We all know about kairos because sometimes goes so fast and sometimes goes so slowly. And time is flexible and fluid. And so it really hadn't been long for Les. And Steve would go and fetch him, and they went together. And I don't even know, Jodie, even now, if I'm making that up, but I don't care because it's so beautiful.
You know what?
It's such an honor, you know?
Yes. And I know that you aren't. Here's why. Because thousands of miles away, even though we're, on this internet connection, I can feel that. I can feel that. I mean, I like got chills when you're expressing that, because, and that to me is that spirit to spirit connection, that truth that resonates when you're expressing those experiences. And it's like time and space collapses, and it's like that heart to heart communication. And that's that truth being relayed. And that reminds me of, in the book, you talk about how, spirits are able to look through these pools into this realm, into the earth realm. And so some of the souls that have passed on look into these like crystal beautiful pools and can see their loved ones, down in this earth realm, and can almost communicate like a spirit to spirit communication. And this one little boy who had passed looks down and wants to communicate with his mother. And at one point she feels him, and it was just so touching. And I just feel that also, I think it was one of the characters named John in the book who talks about how there's this cosmic internet where there's like, no lapse, no technical difficulties like we had, and it's like everybody's just so connected. And so what comes to my mind is when your friend went and connected with this other friend who needed that, requiem that you talked about. There was no time or space that interfered with that, no barrier. It was like, oh no, you need this still, come and get what you need. And how beautiful that is.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely beautiful. And the character in the book called John, he was real. John Taylor was my husband's very best friend, best buddy, and he was murdered back in 2006. And it sounds absolutely terrible, and gosh, it was, the grief was awful, but you could tell that it was the right time for John to go. He saved somebody's life.
Oh, wow.
And went through, he saved an elderly lady from being raped and stabbed, and the guy killed him instead. And you could actually see that in John's case, this was almost a miracle. I mean, it was horrible, but he had cancer, he was divorced and never got over it, he was in real debt, he was unhappy, his house had subsidence, and he didn't actually have terribly bad injuries, but he died on the way into surgery to have his wounds sewn up. And I just got this incredible feeling that he'd been given the option. They said, you can go back if you want, John, or you can jump. You can go now, you can go a hero, Why don't you do that? And all the sort, and he went, and I've always wanted to commemorate him because his son Tim became our adopted son, and we love him dearly.
Oh.
And he has a daughter called Ariadne, and so sorry, I will cry because this. And of course, Ari has never seen her grandfather, and I dedicated the book to her because John always drove. He was a really big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he always drove these absolutely tiny cars, which he could barely fold himself up in. And so the Blue Panda of the title is a blue Fiat Panda, a 1990s blue Fiat Panda, which is what John was driving when he died. So John is Bella's brother in the book. Yes. And he comes to pick her up from the physical world in the Blue Panda and drives her off through the solar system every night to redeem souls. And it was just a beautiful thing for me to be able to celebrate the life of this wonderful man, and because he was a Kabbalist like we are, and a teacher, and it's so lovely that he can say things to Bella like, because she's yattering to him as they drive off through the solar system and go through a black hole and that kind of thing, and he just sort of shushes her for a minute and say, 4 times you've done this and already you've lost the wonder. I've been doing this for 50 years now. I've never lost the wonder.
Wow.
You know, and you just go, yeah, it's so easy, isn't it, to lose the wonder? She's driving through the ruddy solar system, going past Jupiter, looking at Saturn, and just going, oh, I don't know whether he likes me, John. I really don't.
I know. We get so caught up in that. Oh, that's so neat that you were able to dedicate that to him. It's beautiful. And I love his character. And that also reminds me of the fact that she loses her memory. And I think it's neat that, you know, at one point you kind of get the feeling this is such a gift, because she starts every day almost new, and she sees a different perspective instead of having these old stories attached and laced to her day, or these different judgments of different people. And she almost takes a new stand on various scenarios. And, you know, she comes into her power oftentimes in these scenarios, like, no, I'm not going to stand for this right now. I may have been a doormat in these other scenarios, but right now, today, this is how it's going to be, you know? And it almost reminds me of the movie, what is it, 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore as well.
I love that movie.
Yeah. I thought to myself, I wonder what life would be like even if I experimented with that concept for a day. And I saw everybody as if it was the first time without those stories. I mean, I seriously think that I would be complimenting them more. I would be, you know, just seeing them with just fresh eyes. It would be, I feel like I would melt into love rather than judgment or, you know, burdens of, oh, I remember when you did this, or you didn't do this, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's just petty things.
Yeah, one of the little stories is when a guy comes to the front door and asks Bella if she would christen his daughter, and he's very awkward about it.
Yes.
And she can't work out why he's so awkward about it. And it's only after he's left she realizes he was her ex-husband, but she can't remember him at all. So she has absolutely no memory of anything bad whatsoever about it. She can't hate him. She's just got nothing. You know, and she said, well, of course I'll christen your daughter. He's going, oh my God, that's so good of you. I didn't think you would.
Right.
You know, he left her for this other woman. And because she's got no memory, she has no problems on forgiveness. There's nothing to forgive. And I reckon, you know, if we all lost our memories every night, the world would probably be a much happier place.
I know. And I think that's just a beautiful concept. Almost like, you know what, let's just start every day new like that. What would it be like? And it reminds me of Byron Katie's The Work. And one of her questions is, what would I be without that thought? You know, and
what would I do without that story? Yes.
And it's like, when I ask myself that question, I just feel like I would be, every time I'm so at peace, I'm at ease, you know? So I love that you put that in there. And another thing, and you pointed this out, but the reason her spiritual team said she agreed to be a vicar, because, you know, she wakes up and she's like, what? I'm a vicar? No, please tell me I'm not a vicar. And, you know, her spiritual team says, you have the wisdom of the ages. a lot of the wisdom that was lost. And you wanted to go inside the box and in those parameters, bring that wisdom back in. And she was like, yeah, okay. And you see in these different scenarios how she does that. And I think that's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Well, that is based on me, obviously ramped up. But when I was, I mean, we discussed this last time, the death of my first husband, and I sort of threw Christianity out of the window. And the majority of people who do that go into atheism, or they may become Buddhist, or they may go into the New Age or whatever. But I realized that I had a real problem with it, so I actually had to deal with it. And then when I was offered ordination, once I'd made peace with Christianity and gone back into the roots of it and found out what the original teaching was like before Rome took it over and made it a religion of war. And I realized when I was offered ordination, I didn't really want to do it, but it was, you can do much more from inside the box. And these last few years, the poor Methodists in Devon have had me as a circuit minister going round and giving them sermons that made them go, what? Because I've talked about different interpretations of the Bible. I've talked about the fact that they never read it in those days because they couldn't read. It was, a piece was read out by a scribe and then they sat down and discussed it. So a lot of my sermons have been, let's talk about this. And they've been going, oh no, you're supposed to tell us what it means. I'm going, no, what does it mean to you?
Right.
What does it mean to you? And what is the original saying? And what does the Greek actually say? Or what does the Hebrew actually say? And what are the lines between the words? And what about this story really hacks you off? And why? And once you do that, you've got this textbook for healing. Absolutely. It looks like it's a really nasty, brutish book if you take it literally, and absolutely, literally it is, but allegorically and metaphysically, the lessons in there, and every single time, just such a simple one, when Abraham leaves his country and travels, God says to him, don't take any of your family. Take your wife, but nobody else. And Abraham disobeys and takes Lot. And Lot is a complete pain in the backside to him from that moment on. But nobody actually realizes that what Abraham did was not follow his intuition and took the family with him. And it wrecked mostly everything for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And just little things like that. And the law of attraction, you know, the book The Secret and the movie, mm-hmm. It says all this has been hidden. It's hidden in plain sight. It's all the way through the Bible. Absolutely. The law of attraction is there. Absolutely. And also karma. Yeah. You know, good karma, bad karma. And you watch these characters build on themselves as if they have reincarnated. And I'm quite sure that in those days, a lot of people did believe in reincarnation. And I just thought, oh, if I can bring some of this in from the inside, that would be marvelous.
I love it. And my experience was very similar. And, you know, I grew up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then after my divorce, I just kind of, you know, a few years later, I just said, you know what, enough of this. And I kind of had like, I don't know, some just, I don't even know if you would call it negative, but I just had this pull to just search elsewhere. And after that journey, there was a certain point, it was probably about 5 years later, Spirit said, you need to go back. And I said, no way. And Spirit said, yes, you do, because you need to start teaching the things that you've learned now. And I was like, oh, okay. So right after I went back, my bishop said, I'd like you to teach. And I said, wait, what? And he said, I said, well, I have really unorthodox views. And he said, that's exactly what we need. And I said, okay, well, I will put a PowerPoint together. And if you agree with what I am saying, I will teach. And he read it and he said, yep, that's exactly what we need.
So, that's just wonderful.
So it sounds very similar to what you have been doing. You know, people are going, wait, I've never heard it in that way before. And wow. And, you know, like women would be coming up crying and like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. So it's like you said, inside the box, there's such room for healing and growth with a different perspective, with that true like doctrine that Jesus taught.
Yes, the perennial wisdom.
Yes.
The perennial wisdom exists in every different faith. When you take it back to the root, it's the perennial wisdom. And one of the things that we did with the Age of Enlightenment, we all became terribly rational. and we threw out all the mystery. And we now believe the word myth means something that isn't true. But the word myth means a perennial truth. What it means is that in this story, which may not be true, is perennial truth.
Yeah.
There is a teaching in this. And one of my teachers at Unity Church, because I studied with Unity for quite some time, and I do love them.
Yes,
and
too.
I work for them sometimes. Being a freelancer, you can do that. One of my teachers in Kansas City said, I don't know if it happened, and I don't know if it didn't happen, but I know that the story is true.
Yes.
And I asked her if I could use that, because that just summed it up for me. Bless her, she told me that I could.
And John says that. The character John, doesn't he say that to Bella? Yes, in one of the lines. And I loved that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The story is true. This version of it may not be, but the story is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The principle and the wisdom is true. I love that. And something else you point out in this book, this concept about Jesus Christ's death and his atonement on the cross and the way he died. It was very interesting because I had never thought of it in that way. And that was the way that he was able to take that almost like clump of darkness with him through the veil at his time, at that coordinate of time when he lived. Can you explain that a little bit more to our audience? Because I thought that was just brilliant. I had never thought of it that way.
Well, it's the second time I've used that in a book, actually. I wrote another novel a few years ago called The Miracle Man, which I wrote after I'd had my experience with Britain's Got Talent. And it was about what would happen if the Messiah came today as Simon Cowell. That powerful, what would happen, if he had millions watching him every day. And the guy in that book does the same things. And basically, I think that we all know that sometimes you can overcome a prejudice or something, or you just feel so good that you're kind to somebody, and a load of darkness will dissolve. And I think that if you give your life voluntarily, you actually have the opportunity of gathering up all the evil that ended your life and removing it, sort of cleansing it in a way. And like when Jesus died, the veil of the temple was torn. Therefore, he just passed straight through and took with him all the anger and grief and care around him. And in the Miracle Man book, the ending's very subtle, and I don't see why you shouldn't say it. The day after Josh gives his life in the book, nothing happens. Only one day. No burglaries, no murders, no hatred. The whole world just breathes out and relaxes for one whole day.
Yeah.
And maybe that would be all it is, but for most people, one day would change everything.
Right.
One day, no pain, no grief. But actually, I really do think that the coronavirus is here to teach us something like that. Is to teach us you can't keep grabbing. You can't keep covering up pain. You can't keep just buying your way through it. And you can't dissolve your pain by binging on Netflix. This is going to go on until we get it.
Right.
That actually the only thing that's valuable is love.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's a total reset from the inside out.
Yeah, and the conspiracy theorists, bless them, are missing that point. I actually get where they're coming from, but there's so much anger and so much superiority and so much rage in all of this. And this is all to control this. And I'm just sort of thinking, well, we did bring this on ourselves as humanity. It's come from animals. It's mutated to humanity. What is it trying to teach us? What is it trying to teach us? And are we going to learn it? I don't know, because if we don't learn it, something else is going to show up.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about the conspiracy theories and the control, because I remember it was probably a couple months ago, and somebody had written something, and I responded to something on their Facebook, and I did say something about like the control and this and that, and it was probably a week later I was pondering that, and I thought, wait a second, it starts from the inside out. So really, whatever we want to see on the external, it happens with the inside, and the external is showing what we need to shift on the internal. So really, if we do the self-inquiry and we see that the external as, okay, what is this trying to show us? What is this trying to help us understand in our own internal landscape? That's going to really inform how we shift the external and the outside. So I was like, ooh, I want to change that comment now. So it was like that aha, and I hope a lot of people are kind of almost backtracking and reflecting on some of the things either they thought or they commented about, or because it really is a time, I think, of self-inquiry and reflection, and maybe like time to pause and think, I don't know, maybe that really wasn't how, it just kind of like almost like a different trajectory, a different paradigm shift that people might be having during this time. So it's really, like you've said, a time of healing.
Yeah. Well, some of the people even some friends of mine have said, well, the death toll for this time of the year is usually about that. And this isn't any worse. And my view on that is, and we have ignored that death toll for decades and decades, and people are dying. And are they dying because of pollution? Are they dying because of our carelessness? Are they dying because of big pharma and medicine? Are they dying because of this? And it doesn't matter to me if the death toll isn't that much higher. This is to point out what is actually going on.
Right.
And I'm not, oh God, no, I'm not anti-vax. But I think this idea of the vaccination is going to take it all away so we don't have to learn anything is quite dangerous.
Right. I was just going to say that. Another Band-Aid, almost.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You point out in the book that with so many people dying during this pandemic, or even the same amount, but this time because of a pandemic, that perhaps souls aren't quite going through the veil and healing the way they need to, or maybe they're staying earthbound because of the pain. Tell me your thoughts on that, and maybe how we might be able to rectify that or help that, or is there anything we might be able to do?
Oh, sure, we can do a lot. I'm quite sure that a lot of us, when we die, don't realize we're dead. And it's perfectly simple to sort of hang around and be kind of a bit woozy about things. And as time doesn't exist quite the way after you're dead, the way it does when you're alive, you can just sort of hang out a bit like so many of the movies talk about. And I just thought, if we are actually going to experience huge death rates worldwide, is there going to get to be a kind of a backlog? Because I know there are angels and souls on the other side who help people through, who basically show up and say, yes, you're dead, come with me. And people on this side as well. But what if there were a backlog? And what if actually this was caused by the fact that there is a backlog? Because there are more and more people who are so secular that don't believe in an afterlife, who might refuse to believe that they're dead. And if you refuse to believe that you're dead, you will not see that light. You will not follow the angel, because you won't see the angel. And Bella never saw the angels until she'd had her near-death experience and her brain got rewired. And then she could see them, but she was quite aware of the fact that she hadn't seen them previously.
Yeah.
And when she died too, the first chapter of the book is her death experience, if you like, where she doesn't know where she is, and she's just completely and utterly lost. There's nowhere she can go. She doesn't know how to get through anywhere else. So she realizes that other people might be experiencing that. And how do we deal with that? Well, most of us who are intuitive can just sort of pick up where there's an atmosphere that's not quite right. And the simple thing to do, and quite often you can pick up what's known as a hitchhiker. A soul will go with somebody who can see them, because if you think about it, you're lost in a desert. You've got no food and water. You're not actually starving, but it's not very nice. And somebody comes along and goes, oh, hi. And you say, oh my God, you can see me. And you're going to run up, well, help me. Where are we going? What are we doing? And it can be a bit like that. And actually, it's perfectly simple. What you do is you stop, you acknowledge them, you say, you are dead, you need to move on. There is the bridge, and there is your angel. There is the bridge, and there is the angel. And there is a kind of mutual use that the ones on the other side, the guardians, if you like, will wait for you to do that, and they will bring the bridge.
Yeah.
And quite often that person will go, oh, okay, fine, and go. Sometimes they won't, sometimes they'll resist, and then that's a little bit more hard work. And every now and then it's not appropriate to do the bridge. Every now and then you have to do the river, like Charon in the Greek myths, or something like that, and try and get them on the boat. But you just literally work out a scenario in your head which would be a link between you and the afterlife.
Yeah.
And if you create that so that you know it's there, you can go, there's your path.
Very interesting.
And nearly all souls are going, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
All they've done is miss the path. That's all. But you know what it's like if you miss the path and it's dark, you just get more and more frantic, go around in circles. And they've probably only been lost about 10 minutes in their time. For our time, it could be 100,000 years, but in their time, it's about 10 minutes, thank God.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because when you talk about those spiritual hitchhikers who can pick up on those people who hear or see them, it's quite interesting. They can be so incessant too with, oh my gosh, can you tell my loved one this? Oh my gosh, can you tell my loved one this? I've had those experiences, and I've had to discern whether I tell their loved ones whatever, because to me, I'm thinking that person's going to think I'm crazy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
I have told a couple people, you know what, your loved one is telling me this. And a few have been like, oh my gosh, thank you. Oh my gosh, yes, he would say that. Or thank you so much. That brings me so much peace. But others, I've been like, you know, it's just not time. I'm sorry. You know what, I will pray for you and pray for them. And there will be this like energetic connection.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting.
That's also very interesting, because an earthbound soul is still very linked with the family. Whereas the soul that goes through has done the disconnect. They've gone back to other family, spiritual companions, and they know that this is tough, and I've been widowed, so I know how tough it is. And John's death and other people's deaths, but sometimes part of your path is not to hear from them. Yeah, so you've got to find your own way, and there's a lovely bit in the Narnia story, C.S. Lewis, which was also an inspiration for that world between the worlds with the pools, where Aslan, who's the Christ figure, says nobody is told anything other than their own story. So you don't know why. You don't know why things are, but you have to trust somehow that they are as they are for a reason. And if you can help, yes. But if your inner thing is saying, no, I don't think I can say something. What I actually do with this is if I get the feeling, usually in my case, it's somebody I don't know, so it doesn't happen. But if it's somebody you do know, the official thing to do is say, give me a follow-up sign so I know that this is genuine. So they actually have to show you something that you could just mention to the loved one. Oh, I saw these blue butterflies on Friday. They were so lovely. And they made me think about Joe for some reason. And they'll go, oh God, Joe loved blue butterflies. Oh my God, did you see blue butterflies? You know, and I had this quite recently with a lady in the church where I've been working. Her husband took his own life in the summer because of depression over COVID and fear. And I was saying to her, he's around. I couldn't say much to her. I said, I know he's around, and I know he's sorry, because people who are suicides suddenly realize what they've done to you. You know, he took his life because he genuinely at that point believed you'd be better off without him, but right now you're not. So he will want to get a message to you, and what would be something that might be appropriate for you. And she said, oh, I can't think of anything. And then the next day she rang up and said, it's the robin. She said, because he drowned himself in the water butt in the garden, which was awful. And she couldn't go out in the garden for a while. But the first time she went, her family took away the water butt, which was very kind of them, and put a bench there. And she went and sat on the bench. It was the first time to do it. She felt really brave. And a robin came and sat on the arm of the bench.
Oh.
And she said, "Is that you, Keith?" You know, and she rang me up to ask me if it was Keith. And what was interesting was that morning I'd gone out to our chicken coop, and I have humane rat traps because sometimes we get rats, so I catch them and then drive them a mile away and set them free. And inside one of the rat traps was a robin.
Oh, wow.
You know, and you just go, well, I don't know whether this is a coincidence, my dear, but
Yeah,
that's what I call a follow-up sign.
right. I love that.
Yeah.
That is a great suggestion. That is
Yeah,
a great
always say to spirit, okay, you've given me a great idea. Give me the follow-up sign so I know I'm not deluding myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Within 48 hours, please.
I like that. And I like the specificity of that too.
Yeah.
To ask spirit, you know, to do certain things or ask or request certain things like that.
Yes, you want them to surprise you though, because the way the ego is wired, the way our brains are wired, is that if you are looking for a specific sign, you will probably see it. My ex-husband, when he met me, he started seeing red Citroens everywhere because I drove a red Citroen. There were no more red Citroens. He was just more aware of me, so he spotted them.
Got it. Yeah.
You know, so just say surprise me, but give me a follow-on sign. Give me a follow-on sign that I can use as clarification.
Yeah, that's great. One other thing, when you talk about, you know, helping people in this realm and the next realm, I love the part when there's these beautiful, shiny, what are they, like little sparks? And is it Bella's pocket as she's going through this certain realm on like a mission, basically, to help one of the souls. And there's these souls who want to almost get in touch with family. And I just think that's beautiful because you as a person never know how you are resonating or touching other people. And I think that's so beautiful because it's like a pebble in a pond and the ripple effect that we have, we don't realize. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, many years ago, somebody gave me a little silver sphere, which if you shook it, tinkled like Tinkerbell. It was tinkle, 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 tinkle. It's very, very faint. It's just on the edge of hearing. And I used to love carrying it. And if I was nervous or something, I would just shake it and it would sort of be like fairy dust. Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe Bella could be given some of these as fragments of souls to return to people, because I do know through shamanism, through Alicina, Susie, that we do, at times of trauma, we hide parts of our soul so they don't get damaged. Mm-hmm. And you can read about that in Harry Potter, the Horcruxes.
Yeah.
Voldemort does it to keep himself alive, but actually human beings hide aspects of their soul so they won't be damaged, so that at some point they can retrieve them. So Bella gets some of these aspects of soul to give back to people. And the one where you're 10 pages from the end of the book, one of them is going to become quite relevant very soon.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, I mean, the one that I'm thinking of is a mother who had lost a loved one. And and I think it's Bella who reminded her of her daughter who had passed. And she reaches out to actually touch Bella because of that. And I just thought, wow, you just never know how that's going to affect somebody. You know, whether you remind somebody of a loved one or just your smile makes them happy. I think I read something on Facebook the other day and somebody said it was somebody's smile that kept me from suicide, literally. And I thought, wow, that is amazing. I mean, that's somebody who smiled at that person, how significant that person was.
Yeah, I had a friend called Izzy, a Jewish guy, and he found out that just saying he had somebody around for supper who was very depressed, and at the end of it he did a final toast with l'chaim, to life. And the guy told him 5 years later that he was planning to kill himself on the way home, but Izzy did that toast and he thought, to life? No, life. life and he didn't do it.
Oh.
So absolutely, yeah. And
Yes.
interestingly, my publisher said you did that twice in a row in the same bit of the story. You have the woman says Bella reminds her of her daughter, and the man thinks Bella reminds her of his daughter. So that you need to change that. And I went, no, the whole point is that Bella doesn't remind either of them, but they see the daughter, because Bella at that point is traveling outside of time and space.
I like that.
Yes. So I've told the story twice over in one little thing, but so you can go, okay, it isn't actually what Bella looks like, it's what she's carrying with her.
Right. It's the essence of her soul that helps them remind them of a fragment of their daughter or whatever. Yeah.
It reminds them of love.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And to different people that can feel like different things, that can look like different things. I love that.
Yeah. She's still a very bad-tempered woman sometimes. I mean, she isn't a saint.
And I think that's the beauty of it, though. That's the beauty of it. She's like an irreverent vicar, full of love, with, judgment still, because she's human. But she does so much good, not only in this realm, but the other realms, And I think that is so important to know, that we have so much to offer just the way we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So folks, if you have not had a chance to go and get or read Tales of the Blue Panda by Maggy Whitehouse, you need to do it. I highly recommend it. You are in for a treat.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
And the cover was painted by an Australian artist I met on Facebook called Mitchell Toy. And I just love it. I told him it was about a blue Fiat Panda, and there's a Hindu girl and her brother, and they're flying through the stars. And he just did this for me, just like that, for the price of a bottle of gin, bless his cotton socks. I absolutely loved it. I was so chuffed. And I met him because he did this most beautiful cartoon of Stephen Hawking after he died. Oh. And he did his cartoon of his wheelchair and Stephen Hawking standing in the middle of the stars.
Wow.
And I just thought it was the most beautiful picture of the man who wrote the seminal book about time and space, just being in space, standing again. And I contacted him and asked him if I could use the picture for a blog. And we stayed in touch, and he was the perfect person, which just goes to show that all these wonderful things are connected, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like we have so much in common as far as different aspects of our life. I mean, I think it was back in 2013, I went down to LA and auditioned for it was like the inaugural X Factor, and got called back. And it was like over 10,000 people auditioning. And so it was so fun, because now I didn't get to the semifinals with Simon Cowell, but what was so neat is I connected with a friend that I hadn't seen since 6th grade. And we are still in touch. I had a chance to interview him. He's known as the Sinatra of the Gold Country. And he has a beautiful voice. He's like, a crooner, and he has albums out, and it was just so fun. And so there was a reason that we connected again. Yeah. And he ended up going on to the semifinals, meeting Simon. So it was so fun. Yeah.
Well, God doesn't waste anything.
I love that.
Nothing is wasted. And I love that, because every now and then I go, okay, this part of my life seems to be being wasted at the moment, God. So what's the plan here?
Yes. I know. I feel like I've been in that kind of moment. I literally am in the desert in southern Utah. Yeah. and I feel like I've had that parallel of Jesus in the desert, for 40 days, and going through his reflection and casting the devil out, and, all that, when the devil tries to tempt him, with everything. And I just feel like, I'm going through that time. I'm going through that time of healing in so many ways, doing that inner child work. And it's been rough, but that is also that portal of power when you go through that.
That's the whole Exodus story. Moses has to be kicked out into the desert.
Yeah.
And then he has to go back, and because once you're out in the desert on your own, that's fine. But then he has to go back and get all his subconscious, that's the Israelites,
Yes.
all his resentments and all his inner problems, take them out into the desert and drag them across it as well.
I know. And I've met somebody who we love and trigger each other at the same time. And so those are like all the things bringing them into the desert and going, oh my goodness, okay, now what needs to be in balance here and what needs
Yeah.
to be healed. So
Yeah.
it's been quite the experience.
Well, I love talking to you, Jodie. It's gorgeous, and I'm so grateful to you for having me on again twice in a year. That's quite something. I'm
It has
very
been
thank
such a treat, Maggie. And I would highly recommend everybody go and get Maggie's book. Where can we also get that? So
It's on Amazon.
okay,
It's on
on
Amazon. You
Amazon.
can get it through your independent bookshop, absolutely, and please
Right.
do support them if you possibly can. But it will take them some time to order it because I've got a small publisher. But it's on
Okay.
Amazon.com, so it's available all over the world.
Okay, wonderful. No, when I checked Amazon, I think it was what, $12.99, something like that. So
Possibly.
it was like such a good offer, like a stocking stuffer. I mean, put it under your tree this year. It's amazing.
Yeah,
So
I'm just the British price. Yes.
yeah. So anyway, folks, have a wonderful rest of your holiday season. I'm going to be putting this out soon. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. And up at the top right, you'll see the bell and hit the indication for all. Then you'll get all of these wonderful interviews like with Maggy Whitehouse. And I am so grateful that you have come and stopped by Jodie's Gems and here with Guided, helping you navigate your divine journey. All have a wonderful night or day wherever you are in the world, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much, Maggie. I'll talk to you soon. Mwah.